that they had sorties going on a lot later at night than they usually do. Now, I thought it was one of the training programs that they have a long history of, is training Italians, the Japanese, all kinds of people, the Germans, all have been stationed here to learn how to fly our older equipment. Don't worry about the pilots knowing how to fly that old equipment. They're just being retrofitted to be controlled by autonomous AI.
Interject a thought here. What if they're training for disruptive events on radar or weapon systems where that overcharge in the atmosphere, highly electrified, maybe not overcharged, wrong statement, but a highly electrified atmosphere might affect their instrumentation and navigation during those times? Because if you were a government planning for a depleting magnetic field, would you not get ready for that and see how your equipment's malfunctioning? Or on the inverse, maybe it's performing even better. We just don't know. We always think, oh, it's going to degrade the performance because of electrical interference, but perhaps there's some sort of amplified effect on it. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in this beautiful blue planet. Blue planet, can I even speak tonight? Another day of breath. Well, trying to make it a happy, festive greeting for everybody. The world spins in a different direction, as we've seen. Once in a 2,000-year flood ripping through Sumatra in Indonesia. Once in a 500-year flood on the tail end of those storms going through Malaysia and Thailand. I just don't know how you can get 12 feet of standing water across a portion of the country, and it's only a once in a 500-year flood. Over on buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Thank you so much for hooking us up with double espressos. Everybody's hearing about the raccoon. Great show, guys. Love it when you get into electromagnetism. And we are going tonight to the Tokamak reactor, spinning into the Statue of Liberty Nebula. You know, we could take it any way we want to with energies tonight. Keep it rolling. Truth is light. And someone bought us 3. Thank you very much. We're not going to be delving too much into the politics. We're going to be more on world events in terms of climate, what's going on with the planet, the sun itself, and how this is driving governments in this seemingly madness, push sloppy mess that they're trying to, cover over with a wet blanket onto our planet right now. Something's going on. Quite easy to see that they're in all-out panic, and it doesn't care how sloppy or reckless they are. In terms of, France coming out with its new censorship policy saying, we will tell you what the truth is. If you go outside those lines, your company will not be able to operate in France, much like they did with Rumble, but Rumble's back. So France is taking the lead to try to pressure X to say anything that we deem that's not inside this little microcosm bubble of the truth is deemed misinformation, disinformation. You have to censor it in your own countries, or else you can't operate in France.
At least when I was a young man, I did think that things like that would happen, but, it's a shock to kind of see some of the things happen. We've kind of talked about where things are going, and we're finally starting to see where they're at, like in real time. And so instead of predicting the future, like I've talked a lot about AI and machines and all of that over the last 5 or 6 years about how we're transitioning into that. Now we see it in real time. And, I got a couple of articles to string together on you. And this is worldwide. So when you think about anything that I'm saying about this place where I live, this is actually literally where I live. But it's AI coming revolution hits home first at Holloman Air Force Base. And if you don't know about Holloman Air Force Base, it has a long history of being the intermediate base where things go from top secret over to the public domain to where they're known and admitted about. So I could give you a few examples. they have the lasers test site out there. There's the missiles, the whole World War II and the first atomic bomb. All of these things kind of rolled out. Even the SR-71 was here at this base for a little while. And then later the other versions in the 90s of the stealth aircraft were made public. And then they had the FY-22. So over and over again, these things always come out here. We even had the first Raptors, not Raptors, but the Predator drone program before they were too much, making it public where it was at when we first started doing drone strikes around the world. And now we have F-16s and completely humanoid robotics, dogs, the whole plethora of things I've been talking about now, admittedly being used 6 miles from me over there. And this is also the site where they've tested programs to surveil the internet. So, I'm sure they're familiar with the locals and what they look at on the internet. Not making any accusations, but the technology is there and very possible that they could be using it at any time. So in my area, people are used to hearing jets go by all the way back, like I said, to the 70s. Various programs have been here. But now to know that they're robots flying over you. These are F-16s that are flying over you in formation. And I got from an inside source that they have been doing more sorties for some reason or another. He didn't have an opinion on why or what for. He just confirmed that they are flying more sorties during geomagnetic storms for whatever purpose. I have no idea. It's something that I noticed before I got the confirmation that every time we were out there trying to look at the Northern Lights and see if it had stretched down to my neck of the woods, that they had sorties going on a lot later at night than they usually do. Now, I thought it was one of the training programs that they have a long history of. It's training Ukrainians, Italians, the Japanese, all kinds of people, the Germans, all have been stationed here to learn how to fly our older equipment. But now we're jumping that shark. Don't worry about the pilots knowing how to fly that old equipment. They're just being retrofitted to be controlled by autonomous AI.
Interject a thought here. What if they're training for disruptive events on radar or weapon systems where that overcharge in the atmosphere, highly electrified, maybe not overcharged, wrong statement, but a highly electrified atmosphere might affect their instrumentation and navigation during those times? Because if you were a government planning for a depleting magnetic field, would you not get ready for that and see how your equipment's malfunctioning? Or on the inverse, maybe it's performing even better. We just don't know. We always think, it's going to degrade the performance because of electrical interference, but perhaps there's some sort of amplified effect on it. Just throwing it out there.
I think that's probably what exactly is happening, and not just for the things flying in the atmosphere, but the robots and the artificial intelligence networks on the ground. All through the whole area there. And they're even talking about how much they're in bed with Starlink terminals that blanket the base out here. But not only that, they're working with the Optimus robots, the humanoid. And I'm sure that they have more advanced models out there with the military than you get to see on TV, the little friendly robot that they want to put in everyone's home. Can the government track your location, but usually not spying on you directly? That's okay. Well, we know they can. We're seeing it in real time. And you think about these new bases, mine being the first publicly announced, but to have these massive AI programs with things that fly around that can keep track of each object and each individual when they walk around or they drive around whatever vehicles, and tell me you're not in a top-down surveillance grid sprouted up during the COVID era just a few years ago.
There's been some amplified energies from the sun coming in right now. And this is the newest magnetic model right here from 2014 compared to 2025. So when you look at this and put it in context, in a little over 10 years, notice how the South Atlantic anomaly now extends all the way over, and I'm talking deep losses in the nanoteslas there on negative, which means no magnetic field basically, all the way over to South Africa, completely across the southern reaches of the Southern Ocean there.
No, I was just saying, it's basically covered South America there.
Yeah, and look how far it's extending over to. Now, if this were to continue at this same amplification and speed, well, then within another 10 years, it should be heading more toward Australia, but they're looking into some sort of exponential runaway effect on this. So how quickly will it reach past South Africa, move over to Australia, and then start getting further and spreading down into Antarctica itself, which means that the southern pole had moved. And what is the peninsula that you see directly below South America there, this is where the magnetic pole is moving away from. So the magnetic pole is heading toward Australia, but at the same time, it's coming off Kamchatka Peninsula in the north and heading toward Indonesia. So you start to see those two lined up there is where they're. So where that magnetic anomaly is in the Southern Ocean, it seems that the magnetic South Pole is moving in the opposite direction away. It's moving toward Australia and kind of to the, say, 2 o'clock position off of Antarctica there, heading toward Australia as this thing grows itself. So it's interesting to see how the dance within magnetism, for a better term, there is there. Thought I would throw that out there since you were talking about disrupted electronics.
The events that we're seeing that we think are more geopolitical may have a different motivation behind a lot of them. There's what the public gets, and they have to keep feeding them the same line. World War III. They go on and on about supply chain problems, and they play off each little block, each little country off on itself, giving it division and instability problems. And it seems like they're doing that to stall for an event where they can control all of the resources all at once, just like in a blink of an eye, basically overnight. Where they implement all of the stuff that they're building in the background, because there's just so much big distraction out there right now. Some of the silliest things, and where I was going is they're going to use this technology against the upper middle class and down, and it's all of a sudden the technology is all going to fail those kind of levels.
So another thing you might want to ask is, why has JP Morgan Chase moved its entire precious metals trading staff to Singapore under the sneakiness of night, for a better term? So what's going on there is really more the question. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I'm not.
Did I understand that right? That there's like missing, it's not there to deliver to them, but they're still moving there?
Apparently, they're de-escalating their risk by having their desks over there, so there's no culpability if the COMEX implodes here. So I'll say that again. At the end of December, there's somebody that's standing for delivery for 400 million ounces of silver. $20 billion is the contract value. It's the largest contract ever in the history of anything ever traded to take physical delivery of. They do not have that amount of silver anywhere. I think they had 319 million ounces. So they were scrambling across the planet to try to get that. So once that will not be delivered and they're saying we're going to force you to go to cash settlement, I don't even know if they have 20 billion in cash to cash settle with these people. Whoever they are, it's an unknown ransom. And I've been saying that they're looking for an event or going to create and cause an event to get us to the switchover of the economy into this digital system. Well, we can already see already, Apple has said that they're going to let you opt into your facial retinal scans to be able to get onto your digital ID. That's so nice of them.
Yeah, that is nice. Is that saying that soon there's going to be two different prices of silver, the kind of imaginary world value of estimated silver versus the silver that people actually have and they know that it's accounted for and in hand will be at a different price?
Yeah, there won't be any pricing discovery in terms of like real markets as you saw before.
So you can't just go look and see what it's going for today. That won't be the real value of the silver. It'll only be the value of who has it and what they're going to let you have it for.
Correct. And I have a question here. Isn't the COMEX owned by China for several years now? No, that's the London Bullion Metals Exchange, and it's more on the zinc and those types of industrial metal side. So yes, there will be its own price structure where there will be bids across the internet that will say, we'll give you this much. And if you decide to arrange delivery somewhere, and there will be thousands of these internet posts coming up saying, hey, we can deliver this, or if you can get it to us, we will pay you this much. That will happen. So look for something like that. So somebody might say, we'll give you $500 an ounce for the silver if you can deliver it in like this city, Atlanta, Knoxville, Chattanooga, somewhere over in Nashville, whatever. We'll give you $500 an ounce, spot price cash. and we'll meet at this time. And then it's usually in a secured location. It'll be a business obviously offering that with the premiums, and you go in and they'll verify the metals are true, and then they'll pay you cash. This will be off that, and they'll consolidate that into larger pools within these regions or states, and then that will become the available sale for the metals. So I was watching Bill Holter today earlier saying, even if this were to happen, even if people were offering $50,000 an ounce for gold, there'd be no takers, right? Because all they would know is there's blood in the water everywhere. And if you just wait another day or two, that somebody's going to offer 70. Like this will become unobtainium to a point now, and to a point until it reaches its crescendo, and then there'll be some stability and they'll restart a market somewhere. Now there'll be a small window of probably, he was saying like 2 to 3 months where it's going to be, is just going to dissolve as we know it into the ether of markets that used to be. Things will just go poof in the night. So he's like, if you have stocks, you need to actually get that paper stock certificate, not let them, like in TD Ameritrade or something, hold as a broker, because the broker actually holds your stock. You don't own it. You're a creditor for them, an unsecured creditor. You need to get the paper certificates, and then you can own the actual stocks at that point. So he was giving a list of things to do in preparation of this event. So Martin Armstrong also says war coming up in 2026. So that would make sense. If we get into this cascade where they can't deliver, markets are going crazy, the only way out is going to be a war. And that's always the way it has been. So let me go back to this Italian story, because this thing is just absolutely ridiculous in itself. Italy considers a one-time 52% tax cut on private gold holdings, meaning they don't know where the gold is. It's multi-generational, and they want you as an Italian citizen to go, hey, we got all this gold from like 4, 5, 2, 3 generations, and please assay our gold. As the story continues, if you can almost believe this silliness here, the Italian government believes they can raise 2 billion euros by having people come in and show their gold and get it assayed. Meaning, I got gold from 1910, or I got gold from 1850. It's in our family, and let's say we got 50 pounds of gold. We are supposed to take that 50 pounds down. They're going to verify that it was 1800s gold. We have no purchase certificate for it. Then they want us to pay in our families a one-time tax of 12.5%. But here, you're cataloged on the books. So any price increase from that point, they're probably going to hit you with 50% capital gains, 100% capital gains. Maybe it'll be forced, like we did in the 1930s. It'll be confiscated. They actually believe people are going to turn in and go assay their gold here. They say there's about 4,000 to 5,000 tons of gold that's off the books in Italy. Well, I sure as hell don't see them going into the Vatican asking them to assay their gold. It's only individuals. And if you don't, you're going to get hit with a full 26% tax if you don't on the entire sale of the gold, versus, like, let's say the gold, I went in and said, well, I got this for, $10 an ounce in the 1800s, or $20 an ounce in the 1800s. It's 4,000 now. You're going to have to pay the 12.5% on that 4,000. But in the future, you're going to have to pay 26% on all of it. And I'm sure that 26% is just the beginning number, and it will rise up in the high 80s or 90%. As many people have talked about, these capital gains on metals, when these events occur, that's not going to be 50%. Like, you took half my sale. No, it's going to be 90% or forced confiscation. So think about that. You just made an enormous amount of money. You bought silver at, let's say, $15. It went up to $800. So you got $785 of profit there. And you're like, hell yeah, I'm going to just cash a few and pay off my house and whatever. When the government swoops in and goes, no, 90% of that, the $780 is now ours. You get to keep $78 off of that. These are the things that are intended and been talked about with many of the people that I watch that are in the gold arenas here. It's kind of unnerving.
And you know that it ends weird when it goes digital, right? So once that the government start trying to insist that only digital money is used, you have a hard time going to somebody and trading that precious metal for digital money, because somebody somewhere wants a receipt of it instantly. And that's why they keep passing all these laws in different countries, including the United States, to keep track of smaller and smaller amounts, so that you can't trade things and barter things and have your own market value for a specific thing. They want to make sure that everything is digitized and receipted, tracked and traced. So it kind of brings the subject up, what kind of black market is going to arise, where people will be taking gold, silver, even copper, other things for some kind of digital exchange that doesn't, I mean, how is that going to work itself out in the future where there is literally no privacy? And even if you're doing things in private, it makes waves where like the sharks in the water know something's happening. So they're going to want that tax. And it amounts to really just confiscation, because once the people tell them or start asking questions about what to do with their gold and whether or not it's fair or not, then they get a new list of everybody that has said gold. And like you said, they're not going to be going after any world powers. But I've always wondered what the actual price of a specific metal versus diamonds or silver, whatever it is, the amount that they say it's worth in the public versus how many and how much is in private hands. Like, we know that there are individuals around the world, including the royal family and others, that have large stockpiles of private amounts of gold, in which if they announced how much they had at any time, they have that wild card to just completely collapse a precious metals market like overnight. So if several of the people that had a lot of gold in private came out and gave a new estimate of their private holdings, it would change the value of silver, gold, or whatever it was, including diamonds and other things.
You asked that question. Farmers, I know, would probably trade you silver for food, because in the communities around, that silver would be used to on trade for something else, like a chainsaw or fuel. Like, you're looking at money, those paper dollars, they move around communities too. They never find their way to the bank. It just sits in somebody's wallet. They put it in a old cigar box. And when I need to pay for something, I'll pull it out and pay cash for that. And that moves to the next person. I paid somebody to help me do some construction out here. That person goes, and spends it at a bar somewhere. That person buys something with it. It, trades off, gets some beef from the farmer, whatever, goes to the farmer's market here. Those Amish guys keep cash. So the same dollar keeps circulating around in the community here. Would it not be the same with a 1 ounce round or a 1/2 ounce round of silver, 1/4 ounce, 1/10 ounce round? It would just stay in the community and keep getting recirculated where that value is between goods and services that are needed in and amongst the community.
Right. You would have to have a black market open up just for things like that.
I'm going to disagree. I don't think it's going to be a black. I think it's just going to be the way trade is done in countryside settings outside of these tightly regulated cities. Like, you're not going to be able to walk into 7-Eleven and drop an ounce round on there and go, hey, don't tell anybody. No. It'll be in the communities.
Well, that's a black market, though. That's an out of the government system.
My definition is free commerce that just exists because there's a need for it.
But that is what any market that the government says is illegal, whether it's cheese, guns, gold, whatever it is, it's a black market. And they'll treat it as such. That's the kind of world that they're trying to push us into, where you have no choice but to create these markets to go around them and use barter and other things. I mean, I can imagine next a law that literally says you can't trade items above a certain amount without the government being involved. Like, say I wanted to just trade my RV for 2 cars and a motorcycle or something. They would want in there, and they would want capital gains on all of what they perceive as somebody made profit.
Yeah. And how do you get around like something larger, like a piece of real estate or a house, like just land or a house? How do you come around that sale again? Because there's going to have to be some overage on that, even if you did, even if you sold it for $1,000 more than you bought it for, then there's still a capital gain to be paid on that for a couple $100, which would require you to pay taxes and file taxes on that for the capital gain, right?
Right.
So even if it's $1 over, you're still going to owe 20 cents, which would require you to get into that whole system of, I sold something. There's no way to do it. If you take it at a loss, I'm not sure how that works. If you could sell below market value, would that work? And you wouldn't have to file the taxes on it because you wouldn't actually have a capital gain. Incredible increases in property values these days. I don't think anybody's really going to believe that you're selling at a loss when you could just put it on the market anywhere and get above what you paid for it.
We'll just have to do what the Vatican's doing there and say, hey, I ain't got no gold. I just got a couple of, candle holders and a lamp and, some other paperweight here. I don't have any actual money, though. You imagine
money. Well, that's what the elite do. This is what the wealthy families do. They never sell anything. They just borrow against it. I've talked about this in a couple shows previously. The only thing I learned following money around is this is how the elite continue to generate wealth. They never sell their assets, and they're always 1 or 2 or 5% ahead of the market. So great. So you talked about the Vatican. That's exactly what they don't have anything. They don't sell anything. They only have assets they borrow against, or they can lend out and get a fee to borrow. So that it might be a candlestick for you and me, but somebody else, that's gold. They may melt it down and say, hey, well, we lent this, we leased our gold out, but they don't care if it's a candlestick from, the 1800s. It has really, there's no, antique wealth with that. It's a piece of gold that's crudely fashioned into a candlestick. So I know the Vatican does this. They lease out their gold at a certain percent, and they don't care if they melt it down into bricks. They don't care if they get it re-refined, because they get that back re-refined back in the gold bars themselves. But they leased it out. They have so much gold over there. This is how all these families are doing this.
I was thinking, for the next kind of scam to go with CO2, because I'm sure you saw that there's a lot of news articles out right now saying the climate hoax has collapsed. It's a trending thing about the whole idea of the CO2 issue and problem, and whether or not it drives climate and all of this other stuff. But I was just thinking, how you could buy credits from companies. They can buy, like a piece of forest and say, well, they offset their CO2 credits with that. Now you can kind of do it with people, I guess. That's kind of what they're going to be setting up next. It's funny that a lot of people were worried about everything getting cold, and then they went through the hot phase, and I think they're going to be going back into the, wow, why is it so cold phase soon in the next couple of years. And I think these events that we're seeing with the sun and the magnetic field and all of that stuff's going to play a part in that. They bombard us with worrying about a complete and utter annihilation nonstop, but in the background, they're not really doing it. They're just small skirmishes and distractions of, wild things. And they keep having to top themselves each month or each year with a new thing. The Trilateral Commission talking about segmenting the earth into 3, segments there, the Trilateral Commission. And one of those would be this Asian bloc. Well, unfortunately for Japan and South Korea, however they want to live, they are in that Asian bloc, and they are within the Chinese Empire now. And I've been watching the map. So all of that island and everything on the west coast of Asia, around all of those islands, is completely saturated with drones, AI boats, and patrols from China, who are increasing their number of their navy daily. And I mean daily. Like, they're building ships. They know what's coming. They are going to control, in my opinion, the Western Pacific.
Yeah, and one of the places they're going to put missile defense systems, at least from Japan, was on Yonaguni Island. And Yonaguni Island is that Graham Hancock scuba diving underworld's island that has Yonaguni Island, that 120-foot deep, man-made and carved recessed plateau that was, at the time, a worship center when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than they are today, that Yonaguni Island. You can see the 10 kingdoms forming as we speak. I had a conversation with somebody today, and they were saying, do you think China would ever invade Taiwan? And I was like, well, not really right now, because they have the top 2 chip making facilities going on there. And by them destroying that, it would set the entire global agenda of all this, like you say, drone usage, AI, autonomy, track and trace. It would set it back at least a decade, maybe more, because you just don't build those facilities and come out. And the ones in China are so rudimentary. They're far behind what is the cutting edge. That's all in Taiwan. Korea lost that spot. It's all in Taiwan. So to destroy that, you literally are going back 5 years in time on chip making process. But by the time that supply would even catch up, hell, they're talking about just the RAM inside your computer now not being available and costing 4 times more. And they're only going to sell to AI data centers. Even at that rudimentary thing of RAM, which is so easy to produce, to just RAM like you have in your computer, 16 gigabytes of RAM or 64 gigabytes, something like that. You're talking about the highest processing possibility for these superconductive chips coming out. If you set that back, then everything doesn't work anymore in terms of drones. And especially in the sizing of it, when you're getting in the size is the big thing on how they're able to take these superconductive chips and take them down in such a small, these nano sizes is the new technological jump and breakthrough. And Taiwan's the only one that's able to do it right now. So to go in there and destroy that, everything as we know it in this whole world they're trying to push on us stops and goes back a decade. So I can't see that happening currently. So that's my 3 cents worth. My wooden nickel 3-cent piece worth. Everybody tonight, thank you so much for joining us. Civilizationcycle.com. You can sign up for our show notes, 10 bullet points of things we're discussing tonight so you can start the conversation with others. Also, buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle.